Now Cincinnati Connection, connecting you to your community.
I don't want to move, but the soccer boys putting us out. They putting us out, we got to move.
West End residents being uprooted from their homes to make way for the FC Cincinnati Stadium. Welcome back to another edition of Cincinnati Connection. I'm your host, Sharice Gibson. Now, who you just heard from there is 99-year-old Mary Page, who in her own words says she doesn't want to leave her home on the West End. And now her family has taken her case to the Cincinnati City Council. Mary Page and other residents who live in the apartment building on Wade Street are now being forced to find new homes because where they live stops progress for new FC Cincinnati stadiums being built on the West End on the old Stargell Stadium site. Now we are seeing some West End residents protest the displacement of people who live at 421 Wade Street and 1559 Central Avenue. The newly formed group calling themselves Fight Back Cincinnati, Wade and Central Tenants United, called for FC Cincinnati President and General Manager Jeff Birding to allow their building to stand and to end threats of their removal. So Sharon Coolidge has been following this story. She's with our partners at the Cincinnati Enquirer, and we have Michelle Dillingham here, CEO of Community Shares of Greater Cincinnati. Both, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Sharon, you've been following along with the story for some time now. Since the very beginning, you spoke with residents that are there on the West End, including Miss Page, who we just saw there. Now, what are you gathering in this battle to remain in that particular West End building?
Well, you know, it almost really goes back to some promises that had been made to council when they were deciding whether or not to put this in the West End. You know, FC Cincinnati is here. We were awarded a franchise, part of it on the idea that we're going to get a stadium and it's going in the West End. And it's a private $250 million stadium. And there was some promises about, well, no one will be displaced. And honestly, that stadium is on land that was vacant, neglected, hadn't seen investment in a very long time. And, you know, we kind of got through that initial round of what was happening with stadium properties themselves. And now we're seeing some displacement of like periphery, really on the edge buildings. And this is hard. I got to meet Mary Page yesterday. That was a very hard interview to do. A couple of us got to go in there and hear her story. She's 99 years old and she's going to have to move eventually.
Yes, and 99 years old and having to be uprooted from a place that she's been probably for the majority of her life. Now, Michelle, this new coalition that's now started, Fight Back Cincinnati, Wade and Central Tenants United, they made their demands to Jeff Birding to stop threatening residents in those particular buildings from removal. How long have residents known that there was some possibility here that they might possibly have to move from the area?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you when the project was first revealed with Jeff Birding visiting the Board of Education in early 2018, people who work in the area of social services, of affordable housing advocacy, and the residents themselves saw the writing on the wall right away. The fact that this massive soccer stadium would be put right in the middle of their residential neighborhood. Everyone knew right away that clearly there was going to be major transformation. Really, it wasn't just a vacant piece of land. Let's remember that Stargell Stadium had to be demolished and moved, which is the Taft High School Stadium, in order for the project to happen. So already there's been a lot of negative effect on the students at Taft, on the neighbors, and the entire neighborhood.
Okay, well, Sharon, I mean, early on in this, you know, when there were protesters, and I don't know if we have video of that, but protesters that were outside of Mrs. Wade's home, what were you hearing from those protesters? What are their demands? What are they asking for here?
You know, they don't want to move. And FC Cincinnati has since come forward, you know, after they started voicing their concerns and said there's very specifically going to help Mary Page. And there's like a whole meeting with, you know, senior housing and all kind of things that can help her on Friday. But, you know, as a whole, they don't want to move out of their neighborhood. And this is going to be an ongoing issue, I think, which is the balance between development in your city and, you know, displacing residents. And it's, well, it's been a conversation that we've been having for a year now.
Yeah, I want to ask you about this. Can we say that FC Cincinnati is not attempting to at least work with the community? To both of you, Sharon and Michelle, Jeff Birding and Mark Mallory, we've heard them both say that they've mentioned that they are assisting residents in finding new homes. Now, would you say that this is in an effort to assist these residents, or what happens when the residents push back and say, we don't want new homes, we want to remain where we are? What do we see happen from here on?
Well, I would just answer from the perspective of the social service and housing community, affordable housing community, that if Jeff Birding and Mark Mallory all of a sudden find a magical place to put people of low incomes, especially seniors who need access in our city amid an affordable housing crisis. We would love to hear what their magical answer is, because honestly, there is none. And so every unit of housing that is lost is truly a challenge to find a replacement for it. Never mind the fact that Ms. Page and all the people that live in these buildings have been there for many, many years. This is their home. And so this is the challenge of development. And you know, there's many people who are saying we could have done this better. Community benefits agreements, building in community voice into the commercial and residential abatement process. These are policy recommendations that many of us are now using this story, because this is not a unique story, this particular story, to really catapult the public's push to say our city leaders can do better by neighborhoods.
You know, and I do think, in this case, we're talking about 2 buildings that are like 8 units of rentals. And the owner, he was very nice. I had a chance to interview him the other night, and he is actually helping them find new places in the West End as close as they can to their family members and what they know. And I don't think that's, you know, that common. It was part of his agreement of sale of the building that he would help people do that. He does seem to be doing that. You know, council did say they were going to take care of people. They decided the stadium was the best thing for the city. This, you know, development is the best thing for the city, and they promised, you know, to help. But you know, all these approvals are gone now, and we're still hearing these voices. And it'll be interesting to see what they do, I think.
We've seen many urban communities in America become kind of suddenly attractive to, I guess you can say, the affluent when we have structures like stadiums that are built. So for instance, neighborhoods like the West End, probably not properly invested in. And this is not just a Cincinnati problem. This is an America problem. We've seen urban neighborhoods, poor communities not properly invested in. So you have the new development that comes in, and of course that leads to displacement, that leads to a sharp increase in housing prices. I mean, we've heard from Burning himself that this won't happen. And as you mentioned, those are promises that were made that this won't happen. Now that we're seeing this could possibly be the case where it will happen, how can residents properly benefit from the changes that we know are going to happen on the West End?
Well, the community benefits agreement does call for people in the neighborhood to work like preferential hiring when the stadium is opening. And the community benefits agreement is giving money to lots of groups in the community to help them, you know, with their endeavors, money they didn't have before. I mean, there are things in there to help the community, and it's always, I think, a question now of like, is it enough, and you know, what happens as we go along?
I would say, you know, if we step back and look at how the original deals are done, when the city and the county are foregoing millions and millions of public dollars, the question is, what should taxpayers expect back, right? Because ultimately, this is taxpayer dollars. And every time we exempt taxes for commercial or residential, that means the rest of us who pay our fair share actually are paying more. So here you are on a fixed income, the surrounding area may be improved, but that means your property tax bill is going to go up. So what many of us are saying is that we need to step back and really build in some better equity at the front end of these deals and not just wait for a one-off community benefits agreement. And honestly, $100,000 is a drop in the bucket. I mean, it really was not adequate to address what's going to be the challenges that are surely on the way for the West End.
And these are challenges I know that we'll continue to talk about. I know, Sharon, you'll continue to cover at the Cincinnati Enquirer. Sharon, Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, straight ahead, a new push here to stop crime in the West End and OTR. How police say they are working with community advocates. That's up next.